All right, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back. Sunday night here, Earthmaster, with an update video here on May 12th, 2024, 9:16 p.m. California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 1.2. We'll check out the earthquake activity here in just a little bit. Studying and looking at these Aurora forecasts out here. It's kind of been up and down in terms of the potential throughout the day today. But they are calling for a G3 class storm tonight, pending things cooperate, right? We want them to cooperate. So I was looking at the real-time solar wind stream here, and help if I turn that off. There we go. And we do have a little bit of a southward tilt here. Earlier in the evening, we did see that BZ component there take a pretty decent nosedive here. Did see some auroras at the higher latitudes earlier this evening. That has since kind of closed up, but it's fluctuating a little bit here. So we do have that potential maybe seeing the auroras stir back up tonight as the sub-auroral line here indicates that it is stormy. So things are, kind of kicking back up here. The current KP index is somewhat elevated as well. Nothing like what it was, obviously, a couple nights ago. That was quite incredible, to say the least. But up to around the 5-6 range, it looks like. And again, this is all dependent on the CMEs that are expected to hit the planet here tonight. Not a strong event, but we do have that potential for the auroras. Let me show you guys here the Aurora dashboard, the experimental version. The KP index calling for about a 5. And again, nowhere near what we had seen a couple nights ago. That, I don't know when the next time we'll see that again. Maybe the next time we get slammed with 5 or 6 large CMEs, I suppose. But, we got lucky on that one in terms of being able to see the auroras across many of the lower latitudes out here. It was quite the experience. So we'll continue to watch that, continue to watch the BZ component here. It needs to go south here a little bit off of that line. To the downward trend here, and that will allow the auroras to amplify throughout the evening. So we'll keep an eye on it. Overall threat right now for flaring activity, things are they're still active. Obviously, we've seen an X flare early this morning, some M flare activity as well, dipping back down into the C flare category right now. That is because, well, our awesome sunspot here, 3664. The culprit of many X flares and M flares and all this CME activity recently and Aurora events is off on the western limb. Still showing some flaring out there, but really not going to be all that geo-effective here over the next day. Looking at the magnetogram image, still see a little bit here of the complexity of that sunspot, but we'll see you later there, 3664. Maybe in a couple weeks or so, if it holds together, we'll come back around the bend. And we're left with a few sunspots out here. There's quite a few sunspots, actually, but nothing quite as complex as what we had witnessed. Watching this area off on the northeastern edge of the sun, it looks quite dynamic. It is not named yet, but it does look like it's popping off some flares and fairly decent activity out there. So we'll watch that as it comes around the eastern limb here. Probably by tomorrow morning we'll get a better look at that. Overall threat shows a 75% chance for an X flare still. That'll probably drop here soon once the 3664 is off of the visible disk. 99% proton possibilities, but if you look here, the proton events have kind of mellowed out here. Still a little bit going on here across the northern polar regions, but aside from that, that bombardment of protons there from all the X flare activity recently has taken a little break. M flare at 95% chance, C flare at 99. And so we'll watch it. There's a current 30-minute forecast here. Things have been coming and going, and we'll see what happens here throughout the evening. I'll be checking periodically outside tonight, seeing if anything is amplified. All right, earthquake activity. Goodness, California getting in on the mix down here. Still seeing quite a bit of earthquake activity around this little region here, just south of the border. Now, don't let this border wall or border line make you think that earthquake activity can't jump over there. These plates and the fault systems are all connected. The USGS doesn't really show a lot of the faults out here, but the Elsinore fault runs through here and down into the Baja, California area, kind of close to where all this activity is occurring right now. But there's also the San Jacinto fault zone, which I think extends down here a little bit further as well. It is just off the plate boundary, the Imperial Fault, and we're coming up on about 50 earthquakes here in this area of various magnitudes around this place. Not for sure what's going on underneath this area, but I'm not even for sure what that is out here. Looks like some type of water. I don't know. What is that? Anyone know? A little lost for words on what that is out there, but all this earthquake activity happening underneath this town, and that looks like some type of solar panel farm out there. I'll have to look into that. Now, whether that's directly caused because of that stuff, I don't think so. The overall viewing out here, this all fired up early this morning following that movement down here into the Mexico area, just off the coast here of Guatemala into the Middle America Trench. We've seen things light up here a little bit further north along the plate boundary. A lot of times we'll see that adjustment take place up here, even though it's thousands of miles away. A little bit of adjustment here and there can ultimately affect other areas at a considerable distance. And not only are we seeing this earthquake activity here, but we've noticed a broader scale of things out here along the west coast, Northern California, up in Washington, a little earthquake out here in the this is the Blanco fracture zone. So this is a regional event that's taking place out here, but at the same time we got to be cautious because, you know, well, what's down here? I think everyone knows what's down here. The San Andreas Fault, the southern branch here, been well over 300 years since they've seen a full rupture here. Now that is capable of producing an 8.1 magnitude earthquake. This is not a subduction zone. A lot of people asking, well, how come this area is a, kind of a transform fault and up here is a subduction zone? Well, this plate here, the Juan de Fuca plate, has been disappearing underneath the North American area throughout time. This here is a major subduction zone area. It's another time we'll have to do that because it's pretty extensive when we're talking about historical plate movement and whatnot. But for now, watch this area. Let's look at the magnitudes that we have seen so far. The largest being a 4.9. I can't say that's the main quake. I mean, it's the largest quake in the sequence, but I don't think it's the main quake. Anyone could say, well, this is all aftershock activity following the 4.9. Well, the 4.9 didn't come in first. It'd be different if the 4.9 kicked off first and then this would be aftershock activity. But we've seen a swarm of 2s and 3s and then a 4.9, a bunch more 3s and then a couple more 4s, another 4.6. This is some type of sequence of possibly foreshocks out here. I don't want to scare anyone, but to me, that's what it looks like. There's been a little bit of adjustment up here off the Brawley seismic zone as well, mainly from yesterday. I really haven't seen any migration from this area northward, but that's what we got to watch out for if we start seeing that swarming kick up further north along the plate boundary. There's been a couple earthquakes here just off the region, and I've been keeping an eye on it. There's some of the earthquake activity. A couple earthquakes there, Mount St. Helens. We'll look at that here in a second. But watch this. Definitely keep an eye on that for some migration, because anything around an area that is highly strained, highly stressed, well overdue for the big one. I've been hearing about this, I'm sure, for generations. A couple generations. I remember when I was a kid. My mom and dad was telling me they're expecting the big one down in Southern California. Don't ever go down there. It's going to fall off in the ocean. Well, it's not technically possible for California to fall off in the ocean. It's not set up that way. Strike slip fault systems out here, and the general plate movement, as you can see, as a general, just along the plate boundary. There's many other faults out here that do maybe opposite or shear faults or thrust faults, And this is just a general. You got the North American plate here heading off to the southeast, the Pacific area, Los Angeles region heading off to the northwest. Haven't you heard about, Los Angeles and San Francisco are going to be side by side here? Oh, in I don't know how many millions of years, but it just goes to show you that's not going to fall off into the ocean. A little scary thought, though, when I was a kid. A little earthquake here on the San Andreas Fault. Speaking of that, just coming in here within the last 10 minutes, a little 0.3. So watch for little signs out here of some movement getting close to this area because it's highly stressed out here. What it will take to trigger a big one, who knows? Might take someone driving down the road playing some decent bass. Probably not that. But it would take, some earthquake activity within the vicinity of this area that could trigger a domino effect out here and get that plate boundary rocking and rolling. One earthquake up here around Lake Almanor. That's well outside the Mount Lassen area, a little 2.4. Let's see what's going on up here in Mount St. Helens here. Now that's a ways away from Mount St. Helens. But there's some earthquake activity showing up here, a couple spikes. I don't know if that's going to be the earthquake activity in question, possibly. But there's a small little series of earthquakes up here. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 miles from the Mount St. Helens area. So really not associated with that volcano. A little bit of movement here on the west side of Mount Rainier as well. There's that three-pointer out in the Blanco fracture zone. Looks like it's on the... Kind of hard to tell which specific fault area it's. I know it shows the Blanco fracture zone, but there's a couple different areas of this that might have a spreading seafloor center, and some might just be a strike slip type of fault zone. But we'll watch that. Let's go check out Tremor here, Cascadia Tremor. See what's going on. 220 epicenters of tremor underneath the Oregon area. This is down there into the subduction zone itself. Subduction zone locked area sits offshore. It extends from Northern California all the way up past the Vancouver Island ranges, and that's been building up steam for 324 years, and that thing's capable of producing something much bigger than an 8.1. But for now, 220 epicenters down there into the subduction zone. Not a big number, but there is a little bit of movement there. There's that six-pointer early this morning, 6.4 into the Middle America Trench. It does look like we've seen a little adjustment upstream as expected. The 6.4 was a little deeper than the subsequent movement upstream here, but we'll continue to watch that because we're really not seeing a whole lot of aftershock activity following that event. In fact, there's so many earthquakes on the globe right now, I have to readjust it because the six-pointer completely disappeared. Right about, looking about right there. That should last overnight. But there's a lot of earthquakes here in California. So for some reason, the Earthquake 3D program will start dropping quakes because there's so many of them out here. Goodness, look at that. All right, let's look elsewhere and see what we got. There's been some elevated activity out in these fracture zones well off the coast here of Mexico. This one here was from 5.0 earlier this evening here, but it does look like general activity is really kicking up out here. The Middle America Trench right there, that's a section that is a subduction zone, and that's applied eastward here from the Cocos Plate. So you got spreading seafloor centers out here. That's the arrows pointing apart, and that adds further strain out there against the Middle America Trench. It does look like maybe some of these earthquakes here have triggered the strain out here against this region specifically in the last 24 hours. Let me look at the Earthquake 3D globe here. South America region, a handful of smaller quakes out there, but really not seeing anything of major movement. Some fours, that's very typical for that area. The big island of Hawaii. Looks like a little bit of activity out here around the Kilauea volcano again. Let's go double check that. While we're thinking about it, let's see what's going on here. Kilauea volcano still sits at a yellow. It's hiding in there somewhere. Yellow and advisory. I don't need to do that. Update. This update was put out today. It looks like the 12th. The volcano is currently not erupting, and they're still just chatting about the earthquake activity, although a diminishing amount. Ground deformation continues beneath the crater area, though at a reduced rate over the past day. Really just a waiting game here, waiting to see what happens. It's been inflating, deflating here for a little while with periodic earthquake activity. Latest deformation data here shows an uptrend here, indicating inflation after a day or so of stationary or deflation event. And that goes along with, we can go back months here and see that this was a common feature. And it looks like we are on the uptick here. And if things follow that similar trend, we'll see this continue to rise above the previous level. Eventually, it's going to get to a maximum level to where it won't, we'll see the eruption. All right, rest of the area here along the Pacific Plate around Japan. Minimal activity. Yes, there is a handful of some decent earthquake activity in the 4 range. Some deeper movement quakes here south of the Philippines. There's a 5.2 coming in. Super deep earthquake into the, this might be, not for sure exactly which subduction zone this is in, but it's a deep one. 272 kilometers underneath this area. That tells me things are getting ready to stir up out there in the crunch zone. One movement, it's a 5.2 out here around Vanuatu. Is that it? 5.2 from earlier this evening. Fairly shallow. Handful of other earthquakes down here across the Kermadec Trench as well. They did see a 5.9 come in early this morning. Really not a whole lot going on across New Zealand for now. Some minimal movement up into China. Mediterranean region's actually quite quiet right now. Some 2s and 3s. 4.9 out there in Ethiopia, if I'm correct. Yeah, that came in a little surprising. But, there's mountain ranges. There's rift zones out here. Divergent zones. So, obviously, they're going to see some earthquake activity throughout time. Out in the Atlantic, little fracture zone showing a 4.9 from earlier this evening as well. Overall, things, on the earthquake scale, like we've been talking over the last couple nights, how the space weather activity really hasn't ramped anything up yet. It's looking up a little bit above average right now in terms of activity. We haven't seen any large events. We haven't seen any 7-pointers, 8-pointers, 9-pointers with all this activity ramping up. But it does look like things are starting to pick up here broadly. And whether that's related to space weather or not, we'll have to watch that and mark that down in our book. And, just keep an eye on things. Definitely more elevated out here in Southern California and just south of the border right now. But, we'll continue to watch things and see how everything plays out. Iceland area. Not a whole lot going on up there for now. Shows 64 earthquakes, but that includes a lot of the super duper small microquakes as well. Nothing really major going on here across the Grindavik area. For now, the eruption is paused, and it's just a matter of time here before we see things, kick back up down there as well. Let's check out the Svartsengi area. This is a general region underneath the area of Iceland there, where our previous eruption has taken place and just recently halted. It's even throughout the eruption phase there, we continued to climb up and up and up. So it's just a matter of time here as well before we see a new eruption take place. All right, real quick recap here of the space weather activity. It's if it's worth getting out tonight, seeing what you can see, go for it. It's they're calling for stormy out here across the lower, or at least the mid latitudes area, and there is, the potential here for some storming. Not thunderstorms, but these auroras. Current KP index up there around 5 or 6. It's all got to do with this real-time solar wind stream, though. Really, it's got a lot to do with that. And right now it's closing in, it's closing up. It's not looking good for widespread auroras. This suppresses the auroras in general. So we don't want that red line to go up north. I'm probably not going to go out tonight and watch it, but this is a page to watch. If you see this thing starting to drop, pretty significantly, then obviously go outside, see what you guys can see. Space Weather Prediction Center.noaa.gov, or just a quick search there on Google or whatever browser you use. You'll see the top listing here, real-time solar wind stream. And really, speed here in terms of the amount of solar wind coming in has really dropped off here. If you look at that compared to last night, and if we were to go back prior to that, but it's dipping back down here into the looks like some of them around 700 km or so. Same with the density's up there a little bit, so there's possibilities, right? There's a possibility of seeing that G3 class storm take place tonight, but BZ component, it's up there. We don't want it up there. We'll continue to watch that, though, see if things change. There's that forecast for G3. And we'll check back on it in the morning and see what happens. Not a whole lot in terms of thunderstorm activity. Well, there's a lot of thunderstorm activity out here, but major severe weather doesn't look like it. Maybe some wind and hail threats ongoing there. This will be for Monday, tomorrow. Decent chance for some large hail, it looks like, out there, but I'm really not seeing any severe tornado outbreak out here in the forecast. If we put this model into motion, I only have a few runs here. The others will load in due time. Let me look and see what we got. This is a time of year where they're always getting storms out here, but as far as any tornado setups, I am not really seeing it right now, and that is a good sign. So enjoy the rain, enjoy some of the thunderstorms, and watch out for some of the large hail, but I'm really not seeing anything major in terms of tornado outbreak activity or anything set up for any significant tornado weather coming up here for at least the next 10 days, according to these weather models. All right, I'm going to jump off here, folks. Right now, all the seismograph stations look calm, but keep an eye there on Southern California area. Been rocking and rolling just south of the border. So stay safe, and we'll catch you guys back out here early in the morning, Monday morning. Take care, folks. Stay safe.